Tom, welcome to the Thrive Movement Show.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell us about your favorite kind of casting?
Castings?
Yeah.
Bronze castings?
Yeah, worm casting, shrimp casting. What's your favorite type of casting? Bronze casting, sure. Yeah, tell us about your favorite type of casting.
Well, I did that for 20 years, so that's what came to mind. It said castings, gloss wax, bronze castings, doing sculptures.
What about poop?
Castings, I would say red wiggler worm castings.
Okay. Why those kind?
Well, because they're the easiest for everybody to do, and they're the most productive.
Okay.
A worm casting. So you put red wiggler worms in a happy environment. You put 100 red wiggler worms in there. In 90 days, you can have 30,000 individuals.
Wow.
Counting the little ones in the eggs and the babies that are hatching that look like little fine white hairs, and teenagers and ones that are already reproducing. But when you put them in your soil, your garden, they don't eat live root material, so they won't bother your beautiful little veggie roots, but they'll turn and churn all that the soil and process it through their gut biome and add a lot of wonderful biology to the soil. What comes out the back end is pure gold, black gold. It's so rich in nutrients that when you use it for your potting soil, you can't use 100%. You have to mix it like 20% worm castings with the rest of your potting mix. But what's also awesome about the worm castings is if you put too much water in the worm bins and you have a drain on it, the brown tea that comes out is worm tea. And you can take and filter that so it doesn't clog up your little sprayers and spray that. You can either put it in a small amount of it in a gallon jug of unchlorinated water your plants. But if you have fungus and mildew, like mildew you get on your squash and everything all the time, you spray it on your leaves, and the biological life that's in that worm tea will actually eat all the mold and fungus on your leaves and keep it clean. Plus, it's a foliar fertilizer. It'll absorb into the leaves. So yeah, worm castings is a pretty good one to say. That's a good one to check off on the list of something exciting.
That's pretty good. That's good. Abby, what's your favorite castings?
Outside of worm castings?
Yeah.
I don't know. Show castings?
What did you say?
Casting for shows.
Show casting. I like that. That's pretty. Wow. You like it already, huh?
No.
That's pretty good.
No.
So there's a casting that actually brought Tom and I together. That is a interesting one. So tell us about OLLitic Sand castings.
OLLitic Sand?
Yeah.
Well, OLLitic Sand is a natural resource that you can harvest from the shores of the Great Salt Lake. And what's really interesting at it, it's beautiful white sandy beaches. But if you pick it up, put it in your hands and look at it close, all the particles are all of them are all round spheres. There's not, crystals and shapes like river sand or beach sand. And what they are is they're fossilized brine shrimp eggs. So the Great Salt Lake has been there so long, and there's been so many, life cycles of brine shrimp that the shorelines can literally be, 6-10 feet deep of just pure OLLitic sand. Wow. And the interesting thing about it is it has a coating of a lot of trace minerals on the shells of it, but the main feature of it is it's just wonderful calcium. But it's not plant available as it is because it survived out there for thousands of years. It'll survive in your garden for a while too. So you need to dissolve it down, just like if you're going to use eggshells.
Yeah,
you want to dissolve it down. But there's a lot of good soil amendment products or material you can make out of that.
I gotcha. Tell us a little bit about your company, Mineral Tech.
What we do is we harvest natural mineral deposits from here in the state of Utah. Utah is an amazing resource because of all the time of geological activity that's happened here in Utah. in ancient times, there was ancient, meaning like our deposits we're harvesting are estimated to be about 20,000 years old. There was the Great Lake Bonneville that covered 100 miles from end to end and 60 and 80 miles wide. And that Lake Bonneville covered a vast area. And it's a type of lake that didn't ever have an outlet. So material that came in was trapped. It's a cul-de-sac, it's a dead end for it to be there. And over time, all the minerals and volcanic ash, Utah's had catastrophic volcanic activity. There's some areas of Utah you can find layers of volcanic, just pure ash that's 30, 40 feet thick, covered the ground with that much of it. So the lake being there certainly caught a lot of that. So quite a lot of volcanic ash in it and dissolved minerals from the runoff from all the mountains around. But as the climate changed, then the Lake Bonneville dried up over time. And what we've done is we've gone out and we find the deposits of the original pure sediment that settled out of the water. And then also we have the awesome feature of our deposits in our mine claims that when the lake was there, a lot of aquatic plants, sea kelp was growing in that heavy salt water that was there. And the life cycle of kelp is very short. It grows really fast. It dies and grows again really fast. So we found deposits that are as much as 40 feet deep of just pure sediment, powder dust. And this is material that was in fine suspension in the water, so the particle size is very, very small. And then the kelp that living and dying, as it was living, the aquatic plants were covered with snails. So in our deposits, you can see that the deposits are impregnated with lots of snail shells that are they're estimated to be in the 20,000-year-old range.
Wow.
But these deposits of the sea kelp that just keeps building up because it just keeps settling down and like some lakes will have a thick layer of fine mud. Well, this wasn't mud. This was minerals and actual. So the material deposits are beautiful, fine white. When you pick up the material, it's not like other folks that are crushing rocks and calling rock dust and stuff that's actually still not a water-soluble substance. You can take these minerals that we have, they're such fine particle size, you put a little scoop of them in half of your little water bottle, shake it up, hold it up over your head and look at the bottom, and there's very few inert particles that didn't just dissolve in a water-soluble in there. So what we have is we have a soil amendment that's very water-soluble. You can put it out in your irrigation, fertigation systems, and when it goes out into the field, it's a wonderful way of instantly remineralizing your depleted soils. Yeah. Or soils that actually never really had the nutrients because it's just the local rock that is broken down and then it's had some biological breaking down. But it doesn't really have the full spectrum of minerals that plants would ideally want to have. But it's very helpful for your gardens, your fields, what you'd like to be able to remineralize. Yeah. But the real key to be able to getting the best benefit to it is the biology. The beneficial soil biology that you want to put out there with it. So the biology that we offer has well over 20,000 different species. It's shelf stable, so it's not like if you make compost tea, which is a wonderful thing to do. Yep. Compost tea, you have to pretty much apply it the same day. But our biology is in a state of cystasis that you can keep it on the shelf for a year. Wow. And then the biological life is suspended, But to wake it up, you just need to add clean, fresh water to it. They say, it rained again. Now we can come back to life.
Yeah.
And then also add the right foods for them.
Okay.
And one of the wonderful foods to add to feed them with is our trace minerals,
Okay.
because that's what biological life is doing in the soil. They're using their enzymes, both in their body and outside of their body, externally, to literally go up and dissolve particles of minerals
To break down and get the phosphate ion bond breaks or things like that.
to get it all out of there. And then
Okay.
what it does is it takes up those minerals and
19 different elements we heard the other day on a show.
pardon?
We had a previous show and a gentleman said that's 19 elements that they take up.
Well, actually, it's a lot more.
Okay.
19 elements that they like to focus on. But see, when you're talking about elements, when there's minute amounts of trace elements,
Yeah.
they can really make a difference in processes.
Yeah.
Because many times, in biology, that 1 and 1 is not always 2. 1 and 1 can be 3 because a new reaction, a new enzyme, a new process can be possible
Sure.
for the plant or the human or animal body to be able to respond to. So
And in the plants, we only know the plants, or we find them all the time, the plants and the new element processes, but maybe the other processes are the fungus or the other microbes that eat it. And so there's way more than just the 19 elements. There might be, all of them found on Earth that are being used and utilized. And then the sugars maybe trade with one another?
right, I didn't understand what you meant about the sugars trading.
So on previous shows, we talked about a lady. She's a scientist she went to British Columbia, and they were studying a forest. And inside this forest, they found over 300 different fungus, the mycorrhiza and the sugars, and they share with one another. So maybe the biologist who came in says there's only 19 elements for the plant, but maybe the fungus used hundreds of different elements, or I guess there's only 118 elements, so hundreds of different mineral compositions.
Well, my personal opinion would be they use everything that's out there
Yeah.
in ways that we don't even understand yet.
Fair?
So I wouldn't want to grow my tomatoes with only 19 ingredients.
Yeah.
I'd
Okay.
want to have the full spectrum of all the trace minerals. The interesting part about the trace minerals that we are harvesting, it's the same balance of minerals as you find in Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, and even healthy human blood.
Wow.
So you find that there's a balance of how much of this mineral and compared to this other one. Because, if you go out there to your field and you put too much of one mineral out there, you can screw up the bioavailability of other minerals that are present, but now you put too much of one in there and you've tied it up. So when you're putting it out there in a balanced proportion, according to what nature's been growing everything on for so long, then you're better off. But getting back to the biology, uptaking the minerals, dissolving them and bringing them into their bodies, what they do is when they bring those minerals, uptake those minerals, or they're carrying it externally on their bodies, that's what process you call chelation. So what you're doing is the biology is bringing the minerals and nutrients to the plant fibers. And the plant fibers, before I started becoming a citizen scientist and being obsessed with learning all this stuff, then I thought that when you put a seed in the ground and you grow a plant, the root fibers will go down into the ground and absorb up all those minerals and everything it needs to grow.
Uh-huh.
Well, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You need the biology to chelate the materials, the minerals and nutrients, and bring them to the plant fibers. And the plant fibers will put out exudates, which are like sweet nectar to attract the biology to them. And they even hypothesized that the plants can actually put out the right signal to say, I need more phosphorus, I need more of this, and encourage the biological life to bring more of what the plant is in need of. Fun studies about doing that.
Interesting.
But you don't think of a plant, as a plant being able to make sweet nectars. But look at an apple tree. You got that big old wooden stick called the trunk. And at the top of that, there's wonderful, delicious apples, sweet apples.
Yeah.
Well, if we can make sweet apples out of a big wooden stick, then we can certainly make You can make sweet nectars to attract
Yeah.
Yeah.
the biology to come and bring them goodies.
Sure, makes sense.
As
And-
above, so below.
Yeah.
So some of the,
We make pheromones so that we attract the opposite sex, right? So
Yeah.
and I imagine that the trees
or forget to
trees do the
shower
same.
after basketball and repel them,
Yeah, exactly.
one or the other.
For sure. For sure.
So one of the other interesting things that people are really discovering and actually seeing when you really get into using a fluorescence illuminated in the microscope is you can see that some of that biological life when it arrives at the root tips, it actually enters the inside of the root fibers, and when it enters inside, while it's inside, its shell on the biological life individual will actually dissolve and melt, and the plant will take the nutrients, and it doesn't kill the microbe. The microbe can exit, and when it exits, then it reforms a new shell, kind of like a lobster changing its shell, and it's all soft and flexible when you find a lobster at night when you're night diving, and he's all squishy. And then if you see the same lobster in the morning, his shell is hardened up, and now he's a hard-shelled crustacean again. So there's pretty interesting, fascinating things that are happening within the soil. So what we're doing is we're harvesting the natural minerals. We don't go out there and blast with dynamite and scoop it up and put it in a big mill and crush it. Then you just have crushed crystal particles. You don't have soluble. You can literally go to our sites with a teaspoon and scoop this stuff up and say, look at that. And there's 3 seashells in there too. So I know this was live plant material here that has decomposed. And it's been there so long that the first thing that precipitates out of it is the sodium, the salt in there.
Mm.
So it's very high mineral content in the right balance, but with very low salt content to it. So the salt content's low enough in our material that in every ton, 2,000 pounds, there's only 4 pounds of salt
Wow.
in the entire thing. But ours is also very high in water soluble calcium. So we have about 19 to 21%
Okay.
natural water soluble calcium, and there's some really good experts out there that are teaching that 90% and more of plants, animals, and humans are deficient in calcium.
Yeah.
So to be able to have good natural calcium you can introduce out there along with a good biological life. And our line of biologics, we have the full spectrum. We have the biologics that you can use for treating your seeds. So you don't have to put a chemical fungicide on there, which is not good because when the seed goes into the soil, then it makes a shield of death zone that all the biology can't come and help the seed, really get a head start in generating. So we have a natural seed treatments to be able to pre-treat the seeds. And then we have our concentrated biology that you put out there in the fertigation system's easiest way when you're watering, put some in your watering can. But when you send the biology out in the field and you want to send them out there with a sack lunch of minerals for them to be able to eat when they arrive, so they can hit the ground running. And many types of beneficial soil biology, if you put them in a happy environment, they'll start replicating every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So some of them will be a couple hours, some of them actually every day. But when you sit down to a square root calculator and you say, well, we started out with 1 billion per drop when we put it in there, how much do we have now? And then the biological life will get out there in your soil and it'll start processing the soil. It'll start eating it and becoming happy and multiplying because they have good food source. But what they do is they leave behind what you can describe as like a sticky glue.
Mm-hmm.
So as they process through the soil, they'll cause fine clay soil like what we have on my ranch down there in Nephi. I have it's like concrete when it's dry. It's super fine, hard clay soil. Has a lot of wonderful nutrients in it, but it's so finely packed, air and water can't penetrate it. But when you put the biology on the soil, and it starts to process the soil. Then what it does is it causes the soil to clump up, kind of like black gold cottage cheese, like kind of semi-dry cottage cheese. So if you imagine a glass vase full of marbles, you see all that space in between there that you can get water and air inside there. That's the change in the tilth of the soil that the biology will do in your soil. The more biomatter you can get in your soil, that dramatically helps the
more
whole
texture.
process. Well, just more food
Yeah.
and more cavities remaining after they eat those,
Gotcha.
particles of biomatter.
Do you know in
soil.
the biomatter or the microbes? Do you know which of the microbes are eating each other versus which ones are eating the minerals that are being introduced?
I couldn't name them.
Yeah.
I'm still a beginning soil scientist, so I'm all excited about creating the activity. I've got compost piles on my property that are, were 12 feet high when I started. Now they're 7 feet high because it breaks down and compacting. But the other day when there was still snow on the ground from a light snow cover we had, went out there with a big long compost thermometer. And my compost piles were 170 degrees.
Wow.
So in the snow. So that's a little too hot to let your compost pile be. You need to fire up the loader and start turning it over.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured since my soil is so fine, anything I can get into the soil for biomatter is going to be a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
But because we have such good biology, when the pile breaks down, 170 is too hot. That kills too much of everything.
Yeah.
But when I spread it out, let it cool down, and I inoculate it with our biology, then I'll have top-notch compost. And then because I'm planning on building a big greenhouse to do for a teaching center, I'm planning on digging out. It's going to be a 10,000 square foot greenhouse. We're going to dig out 3 or 4 feet deep, the grow bed, and then insulate that with aircrete, and then fill that up with the massive amount of compost. And after we put the first foot or so in there, we're going to put PEX pipe, heating pipe in there.
Yeah.
And then with solar panels and solar water reflectors, we're going to heat up a separate below ground tank, a thermal tank of holding heat. And then we'll have a greenhouse with 72-degree soil and water temperature year round and use it. I'm combining all the wonderful technologies that people have already invented. I'm going to put it all in one greenhouse
Yeah.
to just do overkill and then make it a teaching center. And when we come up with the right blueprints, the plans, the build plans, then I plan to make everything that we do open source and invite people to come and look at what we're doing and say, what can you say we should have done better, smarter, wiser, more efficient?
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll add that into the data that we pass out, and then try to encourage thousands of families around the world to utilize their land to start doing year-round greenhouses. So
How
that's
did you get started into this in the very beginning? Like, where does this come from? And this want to learn.
Our son started to get involved in backyard permaculture, watching the videos on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you always want to be knowledgeable and participating in what your kids are doing. So, I stepped on the slippery slope slide of going down into backyard food forest, permaculture, the amazing things that Bill Mulder and Geoff Lawton are teaching, and Gabe Brown, his video, Keys to Building Healthy Soil, is the first one I recommend for people that have land that they don't realize what they could do with it so easy. And then the Lessons of the Low S Plateau, that's a really awesome one to teach you that you can take land that looks like a moonscape, and over a 7-year period, you can turn it into a food forest. But our goal is that people who want to regenerate their land, they don't have to be on a 7-year schedule. You can get the nutrients and microbes into your soil and start doing cover crops. Put a 30 seed mix out there. Some of it will grow, some of it won't. But what does grow if you have access to animals, or go tell your neighbors, hey, you can graze on my little land. Your little goats are free, or, trade some eggs for them. But then if you can get animals on there to eat off, 2/3 of the plant, then that proportion amount of the plant, the roots below ground, will die when you cut off the top,
Yeah.
chew it off. And then that gives you that much more biomatter below the surface
Yeah.
to start making happy colonies of biological life that can start changing the tilt of the soil. And over time, you can have water. You can have land that, when you have your spring and winter moisture, the rain and the snow, whatever your climate is,
Yeah.
your soil can hold that moisture through the summertime.
Yeah.
On my little acres,
I mean, what Tom is talking about here sounds like it sounds like it's so easy. So how come more farmers aren't doing this?
education, haven't been exposed, right?
What do you think?
Yeah, and change is hard, right? Or resources, maybe. But I think education is a big one, really big one.
Cost?
There are a lot of cost share programs. But yeah, change is expensive.
Change is expensive, or change is expensive because you don't have the education to make the change, or what do you think?
Yes, and
Yes, and yes, and
it don't have the education, and then it'll take new equipment. It'll take fencing for grazing or different stuff. That's where co-opting is handy, to get to know your neighbor that's doing something interesting and just share and start sharing experience and sharing equipment and sharing resources.
yeah. Tom, why do you think more farmers aren't doing it? Education.
They don't realize how easy it is.
Okay.
They don't realize how beneficial it is. They say, I've heard it said that the United States only has 50 more seasons before our farmlands are depleted, which is absurd, because when you do regenerative land management, the quality of your land improves with every crop and every season you put on it, because you're leaving residue in there, you're growing the biological life. It's not that expensive to start making changes.
Yeah.
On my property, it's 16 acres, but we only have a very small water share, basically just for the residents that's on the land. So we have a lot of space that I don't have enough water share irrigation to irrigate it. So I'm out there with my little Kubota tractor. I was able to at least get a little one of those. I was out there with a little walk-behind rototiller I got at the thrift store for $35 and put an $8 carburetor on it. So it wasn't that expensive to be able to get out there and start making, change in the land.
Yeah.
But I just get out there and start working it. And, the old saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were able to get a hold of a dump trailer. So now I dash off to the city. Has a city green waste dump, where all the leaves and the grass, has to be dumped so they don't fill up their garbage trucks so much. So I made 20 runs over there and brought over lots of leaves and grass and turned it into my soil and started making those compost piles. But
isn't that crazy how we literally harvest the leaves and then we rake the leaves, or we cut the grass and then we haul the nutrients away?
Mm-hmm. Well, that gets to a point that I was going to say too. It's easy. When we say it's easy, it's because there's a piece of regenerative agriculture that you step away and you let the natural cycles become more natural again, and you're not having to integrate so much effort, where it's taking care of itself, and then in turn it's giving back even more.
Yeah, and you can speed up that process by buying a big bag of 20 or 30 seed mix of cover crop seed and put it out there and start having some real nice plant growing out there. And then if you don't have animals, you just go buy a used lawnmower for $50, gas it up and get out there and just mow it all in, and then you start building up layers and set the wheel height.
Do you broadcast that seed, or how do you plant that seed? 20, 30 seed mix.
I tried a bunch of experiments, because what I'm doing is I'm doing test plots on my land, And I have some.
Can you define a test plot for some people that may be listening?
Well, just a test area
Okay.
that I did as big of an area as I could manage. In I don't know if it's quarter acre or something. I have 16 acres, but it can be 10 by 10, by 20. It can be a little spot. But in one area, what I did is I tilled in the biomaterial that I brought in before I even composted it, and then the next area I did a slightly different technique, and the next area I did a slightly different technique. And what I'm doing on my experiments is I'm trying to learn how to create lush, wonderful year-round pasture without using irrigation. Because in our area, we get about 13 inches of rain, which isn't a lot compared to most places. But if you can hold that 13 inches, that'll be great. So the more biomatter I can get into the ground, the better. So the next area I went out there, and what I did is I just went out there and fortunately at that point I finally got my little Kubota. We got a broken one and we fixed it, and now I can use it out there. And I can go out there with a rake and I can kind of rake it up. It kind of works kind of similar to a plow. So when you want to do no-till land management, when you got terrible soil, you usually have to start out. You got to break it up first. Give yourself a head start. Things like daikon radish and stuff can drill in and help, but we want to do it now. We don't want to wait 7 years. We want to be eating good, and this summer.
Sure.
Be making things happen. So I get out there and I'm doing different tests, and I'm getting every variety of seed that I can. And I just went out there and I used one of those little, like the crank broadcast spreaders, but this one has batteries.
Yeah.
So I just went out there and spread the seed out everywhere after I broke it up. And then I got 30 feet of chain link fence and hooked it on behind my little mini garden tractor. And then found out it was a lot better to hook it on the back of the ATV and just race around. And that acts like a cheese grater, and it grades up, all those lumps that you broke up. And then it mixes the seeds in, and the mice get the ones that didn't get all the way in, but the rest of them are. So now if you look at my fields, it's wintertime now, but you can see a green hue all over these areas, my little test areas.
And when did you start the test areas?
I started in about October.
Okay, so just this past season.
Because last year I completely missed out on being able to just to get started, because I kept saying, well, I don't know when to put the seeds in, because if we can get enough rain for them to get established, and then it'd rain or it'd snow some, and I'd say, well, I don't know if it's going to do it again. So, I don't want to put my seeds out and have the cold weather kill them.
Yeah.
But I just recently learned about fall seeding. I'm going, how come I didn't know about this before? You can actually take a good portion of all your seeds and put them out in the fall, right at the end of summer, where there's the weather first starts to change. You get a little bit of moisture, a little bit of rain at the end of the season. And that little bit of rain is enough to get your little seedlings up about 2 inches tall. And then the snow or the cold weather comes and covers it up. And you think, oh, I thought snow killed everything green out there,
Yeah.
Silly me, I'm from California. What do I know? So, but what happens is those little seedlings actually survive in the snow. The biological activity under the snow and the cold weather is still active. We're putting our biology out now when we expect more snow coming. It's going to be active. It's going to be doing work down there, and it's going to get a jump start for when the weather is optimal. So when our spring weather starts to warm up, those seedlings are already going to have 3 or 4 inches of root depth. So then we get the spring rains, we'll have plants that are, ankle high or even better by the time the summer comes. And then that means we'll have shade on the ground, right? So the soil's not going to dry out. It's going to be 20 to 30 degrees cooler surface temperature. So the moisture will still be there. But if the roots can get down into that layer, because in the summertime when our surface is hard like cement, dry, if you dig down 6 inches, you feel dampness. There's water there.
Yeah.
And plant roots don't really need that much water like you think. It doesn't have to be soggy. There's actually a microfilm of water on soil particles that the biology is still living in.
Mm.
When you're handling it, you think, oh, this isn't very wet.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So you get a head start. And then in the summertime, you're going to have
Mm-hmm.
ground covered. You're going to have roots down where the water is.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think of our cells in our body, because if we're dehydrated, we still have all of the same amount of cells. It's just that they've lost some of their pressure, some of their water, and so there's less to move around. We get stuck in places, and it's all the same.
Right. I know it can work because on our property, there's one little patch. It's like 50 feet by 50 feet.
Mm-hmm.
The grass did get established there. There's some weeds that are growing in it, but it's mostly a patch of grass. And last summer, when it was hot in the middle of summer, that grass was green and beautiful and everything.
Wow.
Last night I was out there with a flashlight, and there was a little rabbit out there. He found that place. He was frozen my light. And so that little patch of grass can survive through the summer. Then I know that grass has enough root biomass to hold moisture.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to get my whole fields going. And then when I have my anticipated success in the middle of summer,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go around to all my neighbors and say, remember that foolish stuff you were shaking your head at?
Mhm.
Come on over and have a look.
Awesome.
And let me show you how I did it. Because, I live in the outskirts of the Utah city areas. And in these little small town areas and stuff, you drive around and you see a lot of properties that might be like a quarter acre or more.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a nice little house on there. And the people that are living there, they're driving off to the big city to go to work all the time to make for economic advantage. I would like to teach them how to get a little bag of seeds and start their own, little dryland pasture in their backyard and start getting that going and get out there with your lawnmower and knock it down and gather it up, put it in your compost pile and compost it and start getting stuff going on. And I like to teach people about how they can start making extra side money with
Beautiful.
Tomatoes.
And a pencil. A little bit of 50. I can show you how to start with $50 and start a business.
Beautiful.
I've been doing it for a long time. And I hope I don't look it, but I'm actually 70 years old. And I started when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
And I just really enjoy teaching how to start with whatever you have in your pockets and find something that you can do. But to teach people to grow plants on the side, my little tomato story, short version, is you go to the farmer's market and get a delicious, organic tomato, squeeze the seeds out of it onto a paper towel and let them dry out so you can plant them the next day. Let them dry just a little bit and then eat the rest of the tomato because they're good. But those little tomato seeds, you can go to the store and get those little paper Dixie cups, a whole sleeve of 400 for $7. Poke a hole in the bottom of it. Go gather up some soil from around under the edge of your bushes. And best is to start a little worm bin in a plastic bin.
Yeah.
That's even better. But put your seeds in there. Put 3 seeds in each one when they get bigger. For 25 cents each, you can buy 3-quart nursery pots. Fill that up with a little bit of soil, water them, and in 6 weeks, those things are, 18 inches tall.
Yeah.
What does Home Depot charge for an 18-inch tall tomato plant?
$5.99.
And bigger and more.
Yeah.
And go out and sell them. So you can go up and down the street and sell to your neighbors. You can sell at the local farmer's market or Art in the Park little event.
Yeah.
And the whole game of that is to sit down with a little calculator and a pencil and say, what's the growth of my money? If I spent $100 growing these little tomatoes, the seeds are a penny a piece when you buy them in a nice, good heirloom pack. And the containers, you can collect containers from everybody. And on average, the free classified, you can find people that close down their little flower thing and stuff. And I picked over 6,000 3-quart containers for free.
There you
Wow.
go.
from different places that were offering them. Some of them I paid 20 cents a piece for to be able to get them. So you can start yourself a business that's going to bring you in the slippery slope of saying, you know what, if I do a little worm bin, one of those little plastic bins, and take a soldering iron, melt holes in it so it has some air, and start taking all the leaves and all the kitchen scraps in there, and go online and buy some of Mr. Jim's
Mr. Jim's.
red wiggler worms.
Mr. Jim.
They're $50 now,
Wow.
but it's good. Great.
But like you said, they multiply.
Yeah, they multiply like crazy.
Yeah.
When you have a good bin, you can take your food scraps, kitchen scraps, throw them into one of those tabletop blenders you buy at the thrift store for $10.
Oh yeah.
Throw it in there, so you got that big container full of what I call worm smoothie. And when you have an active bin, you can pour that worm smoothie in your bin, and the next morning it's gone.
Wow.
They turned it all into black gold
my
cottage
gosh.
cheese. That's 20%. And you can sell the worm castings, but better yet, you can start taking cuttings every time you go for a walk, and take the cuttings and start sprouting them in your wonderful mix.
Wow.
There's a lot of fun ways of being able to get people into making a lot of money.
Yeah.
You have neighbors that have a wonderful, delicious peach tree.
Mm-hmm.
You
Nice.
eat that peach, you say, oh man, this is delicious. I'd like to have a peach tree like this in my yard. But it takes 7 years for that seed to sprout and grow into a tree. And then peaches are more true to the original tree, but ones like apples, it's 50-50 whether that apple tree is going to grow an apple that you're going to want to eat.
Yeah.
Taste wise, yeah.
But if you learn about how you can make money or save money by going to a tree and taking a cutting off of it, and then learn how to just take that cutting, stick it in a little pot, put a plastic bag over it to keep it in a little humid environment, put a couple holes in it so it doesn't stay too humid and get moldy.
There you go.
Then in a warm environment, in 6 weeks, that little stick is going to have new leaves coming out of it, and it's going to have roots coming out of it.
Oh yeah.
But the awesome part about it is you're jump starting 7 years of growth. And when you take that cutting off of a tree, you get exactly the same genetic clone as that tree.
Wow.
The fruit's going to be exactly as delicious as the tree you took it off of. And the other cool part is you're taking the genetic age of that tree. So you don't have to wait 7 years for it to produce fruit. That little stick is going to have blossoms on it the very next spring. And it's going to start making little fruits on there that are going to probably be too big for that little stick.
Yeah.
But if you have a neighbor that's they have to prune their tree in the fall. They got to give it a haircut because the best fruit comes from new branch growth. So if you go over there and say, hey, I'll prune your tree for free and take all those sticks home, you could get 150 sticks off of a tree easy, maybe more, and stick those in little plastic bottles, let them sprout, and then not everyone is success, but the ones that are, transfer them into pots.
Yep.
And next spring, you can have little seedling trees you can sell for $20 to $75 each, depending on how big of a stick you put in there.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Is it hard? Is it expensive? Does it take too much equipment? No, you can buy a little pair of nippers for $8 at the big box store to cut those branches off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And soil isn't that hard to build, especially if you invest in your starter box of earthworms.
Yeah.
A lot of fun things to be able to get people excited about being able to do it. And for a lot of people that they're on a fixed income, the extra couple $1,000s makes a difference in the family budget. That's nice.
True.
Plus, if you're growing things you can eat, your little tomatoes, if you don't sell them all right away, gosh, they might make tomatoes before you get them sold.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be terrible. I'd have about tomatoes that are delicious. I can sell the tomatoes and I can sell the plant.
Yeah.
So,
What's the hardest thing you've ever grown?
The hardest is really just to maintain the moisture level in what you have. So if you're going to do a little garden, then I would suggest that you invest in going down to Home Depot and buying yourself a little watering timer and some water lines and
Watering timers.
some little
I'd
Getty
be
drip
built
lines.
watering timers at MIU.
Oh,
She built
yeah,
them?
we put an automated watering system into our little greenhouse where we seed start,
Yeah,
and then our hard yard where we harden off all the plants.
right.
And because we were out there watering 3 times a day, if not 4 times a day on the really, really hot days in the summer.
Right.
And it saved us so much time and energy. We didn't have to be there over the weekend. I mean, you're staffing a place that you don't live. And so we were having to say, like, hey, are you going to come in on Saturday? Like,
Yeah.
okay, did you guys remember to water the plants? Otherwise, you're screwed. In 2
Yeah.
days, you're done.
Get your plant up to 10 inches tall, and then you forget one weekend, and
Yeah.
you're in setback. You
Oh,
put
yeah.
stress on it. So yeah, I suggest the most difficult thing is for people to really keep up with their, watching their plants,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
to put a good little watering timer on there.
Yeah.
That's really essential. And then when you have the water timer, you can set up a way that you can, drip nutrients in there.
Yeah.
You can introduce your worm tea and compost teas and stuff
Mhm.
in there to be able to do that. So
For sure.
that's the best. So that's the challenge that everybody has, is
Yeah.
maintaining, paying attention to them, because um, it's easy for life to get in the way, get busy, and then realize, oh, spit, and they'll look at, they're all mad
Yeah.
at me.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
What are some other of your really cool, innovative projects that you could share with us? Like projects meaning tools that you built out of what you had
What
for what you needed.
what about the drinker for the cattle with livestock?
Um, well, yesterday we just set up a solar panel, and we bought one of those little 12-volt water heater elements, and we drilled a hole in the ice in my little goldfish pond out front from my practice pond, and we dropped that in there to see if it'd at least keep a hole in the ice,
Uh-huh.
melted, because the dogs are always they're always licking ice,
Sure.
and chewing on snow, and we have 2 small little flocks of chickens that we open range out in the field, and they're out there chipping away at the edge of the rubber liner for my little pond.
Yeah.
That's black, so it absorbs more sun, so you melt a little bit of water around the edge there.
Yeah.
So we put in a little solar powered, put a little bank of 2 batteries under the solar panels, and I didn't get a chance to check it this morning.
Mm.
Later, 2 hours after dark, the little element still felt warm to the touch for
Yeah.
what the batteries could do. So that's one. But as far as for a watering trough type thing, you can put the ideal thing would be is if you could take a ball and inject it with salt water, mostly partly, throw that into your watering tank. So the salt water in it prevents the ball from freezing.
Mhm.
And then that causes, when it semi floats at the surface, the animals can learn to come and just push on the ball with their nose, pushes it down, and they get a flush of water
Yeah.
to drink. And you can keep a water trough open. That's a neat water trick.
Very cool.
Interesting. What other tools have you built
Have I built?
that are things that you came up with that just made logical sense?
I don't know. It all seems so logical. It doesn't seem like anything special to talk about. But my career is that I've been a commercial artist for 50 years.
Okay.
And many times my ideas didn't work as good as I told everybody it would. And I didn't have money to pay the rent at the end of the month. So I had to just look around and be a MacGyver and just take materials and put it together. So, gosh, if you don't have anything, you can just get a little bag of Portland cement for, it used to be $6 at Home Depot. Maybe it's 10 now. And you can literally just take soil, just take
Yeah.
some dirt and mix it together, and take a plastic pot
Mhm.
or anything and clump it over the outside of it.
Mhm.
Let it put some shape, put some diagonal line impressions in it or anything. Let it harden up. Tomorrow you have a succulent pot you can sell for $30.
Wow.
They pay lots of money for pots.
Hmm.
You can do fun things like that,
Yeah.
to put it together, or you can
Yeah.
soak cement and dirt in burlap and form that over a bucket.
Yeah.
And then when it's hardened, take it off, and you have a real organic, natural looking pot that'll look good.
Wow.
And at the Art in the Park event, you can sell those for $20, $30 each.
That's awesome.
And if you like, you can get some oxide pigments. They sell natural pigments for concrete. Get a little bit of that, put a
So
pinch
no
of that
red
in.
40?
Red dye 40.
Yeah, no red 40.
That's good.
Or you can, if you're ambitious, you can take some colored rocks and crush them up.
There you go.
And then take those rocks, and when you make your piece, then press the powdered rock on the outside of it,
Mm.
and it'll make it really natural, like looking and stuff, and make it la-di-da and trade it for some good money.
Wow, that's interesting. So are there any kids on your farm that'll be taking over for you?
Our son lives out in California, and he's having lots of fun being a UPS driver.
Okay.
And we raised our son in Laguna Beach on the deal that, hey, I do the extra work and be here. So when you want adrenaline rush excitement, you grab your board and go get in the ocean.
Yeah.
None of that going smoking a joint behind the dumpster in the cafeteria at school.
Yeah.
So we raised him in Laguna Beach. So we'd hit the beach together in the morning and at the end of the day, when the tourists are all there in the middle of the day and it's all crowded. But if you hit the beach in the morning, then there's nobody there. You got the whole beautiful
Yeah.
beach to yourself. And the end of the day, they all went home for dinner. So then you have it again.
So you're a California transplant to Utah. Why did you come to Utah?
To come out here to work at the family business on harvesting these minerals.
Okay.
So we were looking at the companies that had minerals available, and they were not very good folks to work with. I didn't like them.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll figure out how to get better materials.
Gotcha.
So I just had adventures traveling the backcountry in my little front wheel drive Ford Taurus and driving through the snow and the slush and up and down some pretty amazing hills.
Yeah, for sure.
I look at them now and say, I did that in that car. You nuts.
Wow.
But anyway, I just went out there and studied the geology and figured out, well, where would this material be that would be better material? And when I found it, then, we all started doing the happy dance. This is stuff we can really help people with.
Wow.
This is really going to make a change
Wow.
to be able to do regenerative land management without having to use all those chemicals that are killing all your microbes and
Yeah.
making your soil worse every year.
Do you think that a higher bricks value in the content of your fruits and vegetables will build back a better human?
Well, absolutely. It's more nutrient dense. Yeah. And when you get the bricks value, which is the sugar content of your plants up there, by giving them good soil biology to support them and help them grow, then the interesting thing is that the destructive destructive insects that'll eat your plants don't have a pancreas. So when they eat a nutrient-dense plant leaf that has a high bricks rating, high sugar rating, then they don't have a pancreas, so they can't process the sugar in that plant material they just ate. So that ferments in their body and turns to alcohol and kills the insect.
Wow.
So insects won't attack healthy plants. They're looking for the straggler, the sick one, the one at the end of the row you didn't give enough water to or something. And then they'll attack that one. A fun, quick story about what I learned about all that is when I first got to the ranch, I saw that soil, and I've been studying, all these people doing backyard food forests and talking about their soil health, aeration and everything. And I went out there and I scratched out a couple little patches and I put in 30 seed mix of cover crop, and I didn't use anything on it. I just said, see what this ground can do.
Yeah.
And those plants were just struggling, and their leaves were about 4 inches long, and they're laying flat on the ground, and they're not really vigorous, and they're growing really slow. I've seen plants grow fast. What's wrong with you guys? And, but then what happened is I got invaded by flea beetles. I never heard of those things before. Flea beetles or plants? What's this nonsense?
Yeah.
But on each leaf that's only 4 inches long, there'd be like 50 of them on there.
Wow.
And they're eating out all the material between the fiber and the leaf. So all my little leaves look like grandma's doilies. They're all just lacy.
Yeah.
And I had to make a run back to California. I was shuffling back and forth to bring all my stuff out here. I knew I was going to be gone for 3-4 days. And I'd been out there watering it like 2-3 times a day,
Wow.
trying to get those things to do something. So I built a little berm around it, about 3-inch berm. And I just took my little lawn tractor and a trailer and a 55-gallon drum. And I went out there and I put, emptied the water from that I've been taking out of my fish tank. I have an IBC tote that I'm raising goldfish and koi in. So when I do a pond,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to spend so much money for the fish. They're already halfway there. So I took the fish water and I was learning how to do compost tea. And then I also took some of our stuff and put it in there too. And then I flooded my little test plots with about 2 or 3 inches of water, saying, well, I hope that keeps you soggy enough to not die before I get back.
Yeah, for sure.
But because I started putting the biology and the nutrients in like that, the trace minerals, when I came back, my sickly little plants were standing up, even though they were still lacy, but in the middle, new little root fiber. I mean, new little shoots, 2 inches tall, were already sticking out of there.
Wow.
Jumping to life with happiness. And then quickly those leaves became 12 inches long and 8 inches wide. But the flea beetles, they wouldn't eat the new ones that are coming up because that's new leaves that have Brix rating. They're still eating the weak leaves. And then the flea beetles completely disappeared.
Mm.
And then I had daikon radish and turnip leaves that if I hold them up in front of my chest, they'd be as big as my chest. And they had stalks on them, like rhubarb stalks. And you could rip them off and eat the stalk. And the stalk was delicious and juicy, even for the turnips. Had the little turnip bite to it. But it was awesome. You could just eat the leaves, just walking around, feeling proud about my garden, eating these giant leaves, going, feeding them to my wife, and she says that's awesome too.
Oh.
But by increasing the Brix rating, I eliminated all the pests.
Wow.
I went out there at first with a weed blower. You can connect it up backwards so it's sucking.
Yeah.
And I went out there like a vacuum cleaner and I'd put it right on top of the plant and suck 90% of those stupid flea beetles off through my vacuum.
Awesome.
But 3 days later, they're back there again. So, that's not effective to go out there and vacuum all your plants. But it's just an awesome demonstration of how important the Brix rating is.
Yeah,
Plus the nutrient density, of a wrapper tomato
sure.
can be 800 times more nutrient
Yeah.
than a store-bought greenhouse tomato where they're just doing hydroponics and not doing the biology and not really giving the plants everything they need.
Yeah, makes sense.
100%.
Does Mineral Tech, how do you go to market with your products? Do you white label for other packagers? How do you get your products to market?
It's available for white label to do that, but we got off to a false start with a marketing team that talked more than they could perform. So now one of our strategies is that we're working with other people that are making biologicals and wonderful recipes. They already have a distribution network that they're working with. So we plan on plugging in to be
Key partners.
key partners with more people because the movement is all about getting as many people into regenerative and permaculture land management as possible.
Yeah.
So all boats rise in a rising tide. So the more we can help each other. So we just did a really wonderful partnership deal for all of our biology, and he's going to be using all of our minerals in all of his recipes.
That's awesome.
But it's just a matter of such a small percentage of people understand this, and it's amazing, the benefit that can happen. We did a deal that we were involved in donating a lot of our materials to Haiti, and in the beginning stages of that, I was put onto video conferences with people that are from Haiti. They're now living in Florida, and they wish to pay it forward back. And I explained a fun project that encouraged them to do there, which is all along the lines of how can you start making money when you don't have any money?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I've had maquiladora facilities of my own in Mexico, where I went down there and gave them jobs there so they could stay where their family is, and not have to be running through the fence at night. So the best way to solve that problem was give them jobs where they are, so they're happy where they are. They don't want to come up here and pay $6
Yeah,
for a gallon of milk.
for sure.
They got family. They're good people. They want to stay together. So, but in Haiti, what I suggested is, I've seen that in areas where the people are financially, they're poor.
Yeah.
They live on soda,
Mm.
which is despicable and terrible. People
Yeah.
are selling that stuff, but that means that there's 2-liter bottles everywhere.
Yeah.
So I said, well, you should take 2-liter bottles, go collect them up. You should cut the bottom off of it.
Mhm.
And then go around to wherever there's a water embankment or anywhere you can find some kind of soft soil that might have biology in it,
Mhm.
and go scrape that up and use that for your potting soil, and put it in, fill up the 2-liter bottle,
Mhm.
and then put the bottom you cut off back in it upside down to make a plug,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
and then turn it over right side up and put a couple of tomato seeds in it.
Huh.
And then when they start growing about 6 or 8 inches tall, then take another bottle and use a little sharp edge and cut a strand off of it, like making plastic string,
Mhm.
and cut a notch in there and stick it in there, with a little notch so it just locks in there. And then hang it, the plant side down to make an upside down hanging plant, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then
Smart.
the top of it, take that plug out of there and put some radish seeds in there, because radish seeds are instant gratification. In
Yeah.
3 days, you can be eating them.
Yeah.
So there's nice bushy green stuff on the top.
Uh-huh.
Then in areas like that, a real problem for trying to start a garden is as soon as your tomatoes are right, the rats come and eat them.
Oh.
So if you teach them how to make hanging gardens out of no cost at all, except for the tomato, they eat
Yeah.
the rest of it and save the seeds,
Yeah.
then you can make a whole porch or patio or the tree next to your hut, wherever you're at, that has all these hanging tomato plant bottles.
Wow.
And if you walk around up and down the street with the tomato plants that actually have flowers on them and some little tomatoes starting on it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you can sell them for something that's in balance for whatever the local economy is.
Yeah. For sure.
And if you don't sell them all, oh my gosh, you might have tomatoes
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to sell.
Fair.
What a terrible situation.
Yeah,
And you
for
might
sure.
get to eat some of them yourself too, right?
For sure.
So I encouraged them to do things like that. And they said, oh, that's wonderful. So what they did is they took the seed of that idea and they went farther, and they created teaching programs for the schools. And they taught the kids to do a little victory garden
Yeah.
at the school.
Nice.
And last I heard, they had like 50 schools in Haiti that were doing that. And then they said, we have a waiting list of 100 other schools that want to do, hundreds of other schools that want to do the same program too.
That's awesome.
But a family can make a livable income with no money except to buy those original tomatoes. There's 200 seeds in a tomato.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can put three seeds in each one of them. You can make a whole lot of them.
Yeah.
So I really like to be able to teach people how to be able to grow off of a little investment. I
That's
used to
awesome.
volunteer and teach real estate investing, creative real estate investing.
Yeah.
That's another word for saying, how do I get involved in real estate when I don't have any money?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did a deal from what I learned from the mentors I went to in Dana Point, that I got a house under contract for a $10 earnest money deposit,
Wow.
and fixed
Amazing.
it up and sold it. And
Yeah.
so it doesn't take a lot of money to get started. It takes the desire to be a little smarter than the average bear
Mhm.
and start learning.
That's awesome.
Looking forward to creating a teaching center there at our Nephi property with the greenhouses, and put up little demonstrations of how people can grow duckweed.
Yeah.
Duckweed's an amazingly low cost thing to do.
Uh-huh.
You can get some tarp, you can lay it out and put some 2x4s around it, or build up dirt
Yeah.
and make a shallow pond and go get some duckweed. That stuff doubles in volume every 2 days.
Wow.
So the square root of that, one little handful you took from a local little creek, put it out there. That duckweed is a valuable food source. If you keep it, sanitary, it's actually a good human food source.
Wow.
But it's also a really good food source for compressing and selling as koi fish food pellets, or
Wow.
for your compost pile for the
Yeah.
nitrogen you need, or feeding your animals. You can raise expensive exotic rabbits for $200 each.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's lots of fun
And then eat
you
them.
can do. You just need to search out, check your pockets, look in your junk pile. What do I have?
Yeah.
What can I make out of this?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, Tom, we appreciate having you on the show. And I look forward to having you on the show again. Abby, is there any other questions you want to ask Tom?
Who are some of your mentors? Who are some of your you've mentioned a few, but who are some more? Because I know you've got plenty more that you're excited
One
about.
of the real good ones for people to get started is John Kohler.
Okay.
He's got a YouTube channel with like 1,200 videos now called
Okay.
Growing Your Greens.
Growing your greens.
He's got some really good practical stories about, how to just get started in your backyard,
Nice.
how to get going and start
Cool.
eating better. And once you start tasting the difference of what, you
Yeah.
grew,
Mhm.
it's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Mhm.
I know that's one of Abby's goals is to get people into the garden. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty exciting way to go about it. So cool.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you on the show, and we look forward to having you out again soon. You're very deep knowledge, and we'd love to come out to the farm and actually see you growing, and maybe do one of these where you can show us around to the different pots and piles that you're putting in as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Summertime, we'll see what survived and what didn't on my little test plots. And we'll see if I got a hang of it yet, or I got a lot more to learn.
Cool. Perfect. Sounds good.
Beautiful. Thank
Thank you.
you.